Hello again! I'm really on a roll with these discussion videos. I have made so many today. My throat is dying, my mouth is dry, but hey, I must make more because I'm really enjoying these and I hope that you are too. And today, I really wanted to talk about kind of Blizzard's movement towards kind of genericness of the different characters, the classes, and the specs. And I mean, you might be saying that they're not generic. They kind of are. I mean, DPS, DPS, tanks, tank, healers, heals. Sure, they're a little bit different, and they can do different things in certain ways. I know that, for example, warriors actually do have a lot of utility, but on the whole, it's not really too different. And I mean, on the upside, as Blizzard has said, they really want people to be bringing the player, not the class, and not the spec. They want people to be bringing players because the players are good, the players are great, and everything, and they don't want people saying, no, I'm not bringing you because you're a fire mage, and we need an elemental shaman. That's kind of the whole kind of thinking of Blizzard. And on the one side, I'd really agree with that. I think it's kind of nice that you have people choosing the player rather than the class, and I can agree with that on a lot of levels. But at the same time, it feels like we're losing a lot of what could be really fun and interesting because the classes are becoming a little bit generic. You know, everyone wants the biggest damage dealer. You know, you got your boomkins and you got your affliction warlocks, and I mean, sure, they do have some utility in different situations, but for the most part, they are actually reasonably generic. And if you do get some fights where, you know, someone's like, you must bring a rogue for this, and of course that can be a bit irritating. You know, maybe the rogue gets picked and you get shuffled out because they desperately need a rogue for the fight, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you should have some classes be absolutely necessary for certain fights. What I'm really saying is, do we really need boomkins to be doing huge amounts of DPS? I mean, I love that. I mean, come on, boomkins are awesome, and they're fun to play. But maybe boomkins can be doing other things that can make them more interesting in different ways. Maybe we can get priests doing different things. I mean, it's really more of a kind... I don't know what we would specifically do, and I'm not sure that boomkins should be the one that get the massive utility boost. What I'm really saying is, we should get some kind of differential. I mean, we shouldn't just have everything being DPS. We shouldn't have all of the buffs just overlapping. I mean, technically, your boomkin doesn't actually need... I'm using as an example again. Please forgive me, dear boomkins. I do not want you to be nerfed, but you are being used as an example. I'm sorry. You poor little chickeny guys. I play a boomkin, so I feel you. I feel you. But the main thing is, maybe the boomkin does half the DPS, or a quarter of the DPS of the fire mage, but he buffs everyone with something that really helps to kind of boost everyone's overall DPS and make up for that. Or he has this exceptional utility in... And I'm not talking about specific utility, because the problem with utility is that it can be like, oh, well, we need a boomkin in this fight, but for the other 19 bosses, please just go away. You will now cease to exist in our minds because we really don't care for you. The main thing is that fights kind of need to be designed so that if you bring a fire mage, that extra DPS will be just as useful as if you bring something with a lot more utility. So it still kind of stays with mainly bringing the player rather than the class, but it brings something else to the table rather than just straight up numbers. You know, maybe the boomkin has a way of CCing the ads, right? Whereas the mage could just straight up kill them. Maybe the boomkins can CC them in a way that makes it easier for the fight. They're not even particularly good examples, but the main thing I really want to say is, wouldn't it make the game more interesting if the classes were very different? Wouldn't it be kind of cool if mages did stupidly high amounts of damage, while warriors could just do something else in a specific situation? I mean, we already have it a little bit. I'm not saying that some classes, you know, all classes are just totally generic, because they aren't. I mean, elemental shamans, for example, if you have a fight with lots and lots of ads and there's a good AoE situation, your best friend is probably that elemental shaman. You should go and, you know, bribe him and coerce him into your raid team for that fight, because elemental shaman chain lightning is crazy, at least at the time of making this video. And but the main thing is really, I approve of the bring the player, not the class, but I think we're losing too much on the other side as well. And it might be that people do pick the class rather than the player, but let's be honest. If you've got someone who doesn't stand in the fire, and he does reasonable DPS, he doesn't tend to die so often, he's got a little bit of utility as well, wouldn't you rather bring him than the fire mage who does stupid high amounts of damage and then instantly dies 5 seconds into the fight? Because guess what? A level 1 can beat his DPS, because he's a corpse, and corpses don't hit very hard. It's just a thing you may have noticed. With the exception of Death Knights, however. They hit very hard, and they are most definitely corpses, though they do tend to be kind of animated. So there is that. But I really want your thoughts on this. Do you feel like classes should be more generic and, let's call it, sort of balanced in a way where boomkins and mages can do the exact same amount of DPS as shadow priests, and all the DPS do the same amount of DPS, and all classes just have sort of slightly different ways of doing the damage, but on the most part they're almost exactly the same, and it's totally bring the player, not the class? Or do you want it to be where the classes are very different? They might not all do the same amount of DPS. They might not all tank in the same way, but they all do it in a way that compensates for what they might be losing otherwise. Maybe you lose some DPS, maybe you gain some utility that makes everything so much easier. And, you know, it is a team game, so having some classes with utility it can really make things interesting. It really, really can. And I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. General community, you know, what are your thoughts? What are your friends' thoughts? Do you want things to just be like boomkins do the same amount of damage as everything else, everything is exactly the same all the time? Or do you want things to be very, very different? The DPS levels are different, but the buffs don't overlap like they have been changed to do. I mean, do you really like it that you can have 3 people in a 10-man raid that all give the exact same buff, rather than different buffs? Do you like that? Or do you want the different buffs? Do you want the different classes and the different specs to really be different, and to really bring different things to the table instead of just scones? Maybe somebody should bring some butter and some jam, because that would just make it a lot more delicious, don't you think? Anyway, that's it for this video. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below, or on Facebook and Twitter, links in the description. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in future videos. Cheerio.